It began with people simply vanishing, without a trace. A teenage girl walking home from school. A young Thai woman offering massages to tourists. A student hiking in China. Their names were lost behind sealed borders. Their lives rewritten in a country they never chose to enter. For decades, governments chalked it up to accidents, runaways, or bad luck. But behind closed doors, a far darker truth was unfolding. One tied to espionage, forced marriages, and a global deception campaign orchestrated at the highest levels of power. Why would one of the world's most secretive regimes abduct foreign nationals from beaches, streets, and cities across multiple continents? What were they being used for? And why are so many of them still missing? This isn't just about Japan. It's about a global operation that continues to this day. The real question is, how many are still alive, and why won't North Korea return them? From the aftermath of the Korean War to the modern day, North Korea has been quietly executing one of the most audacious and overlooked crimes in international history. A global abduction project spanning more than 50 years and at least 14 countries. These weren't isolated incidents. They were strategic, state-sponsored kidnappings involving thousands of civilians, teachers, students, lovers, artists, and even pastors, taken from beaches, airports, hiking trails, and foreign cities. Most people have heard of the Japanese abductees, but that's only part of the story. In 2002, when Kim Jong-il admitted to kidnapping 13 Japanese citizens, it was considered a shocking moment of truth. But what he didn't realize was that this was just the tip of the iceberg. The real program involved Lebanese women, Thai masseuses, Romanian artists, South Korean students, and an American college senior named David Sneddon, who disappeared in China and was never seen again. Many were never even declared missing. Their stories were buried, their identities erased, and their families left in torment. Why did North Korea do this? Spy training, identity theft, psychological warfare, and something even more disturbing, using foreign captives as spouses for defectors, as teachers for enemy agents, and as pawns in global diplomacy. This video uncovers the full scope of North Korea's global abduction project, how it started, who it targeted, and the horrifying fate of those still trapped inside. Because the truth isn't just disturbing, it's still unfolding. It was a cold November evening in Niigata. 13-year-old Megumi Yokota had just finished badminton practice. She waved goodbye to her friends and told her mother, "I'm off now. See you later." She never came home. For decades, her disappearance was a mystery. It wasn't until 2002, 25 years later, that North Korea admitted to kidnapping her. But by then, the trail had gone cold. And Megumi was only one of thousands. The story doesn't begin in the 1970s. It starts with the Korean War. Between 1950 and 1953, more than 80,000 South Koreans were forcibly taken north. Doctors, journalists, politicians, all vanished. Kim Il-sung viewed these abductions as part of nation building. He didn't just want prisoners, he wanted skills, knowledge, and leverage. This was the first wave. But the operation evolved. In 1976, under Kim Jong-il, a more terrifying directive was issued. North Korea would start kidnapping foreigners from across the globe. Why? To localize spy training, to steal identities, and to source spouses for the American defectors who had fled the Vietnam War draft and ended up stranded in North Korea. The targets were no longer just South Koreans. They were from Europe, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia. In 1978 alone, dozens of abductions occurred. 4 Lebanese women were tricked by North Korean agents posing as Japanese job recruiters. Lured with promises of secretary jobs in Tokyo, they were instead flown to Pyongyang. One of them, Siham Shraite, later married an American defector. She would later appear in a BBC documentary denying she was abducted. But the truth is murky. 2 other Lebanese women escaped and testified to being kidnapped. That same year, Duaina Bambia, a Romanian artist, was living in Italy. She received a strange offer to exhibit her work in Japan. She boarded a plane, expecting an art show. She landed in North Korea. She would be forcibly married to James Dresnog, a U.S. Army defector. She died of lung cancer in 1997, never having seen her family again. Anocha Panjoy, a Thai masseuse working in Macau, was abducted in May 1978. Her captors used the same trick, pretending to be Japanese tourists inviting her on a boat tour. She vanished. She was later forced to marry Larry Abshire, another American defector. Her family only learned of her fate in 2005 when they saw her photo on a Japanese news broadcast. In 2004, David Sneddon, a 24-year-old American student, disappeared in Yunnan, China, while hiking the Tiger Leaping Gorge. The official story? He slipped and died in a fall. Nobody was ever recovered. But according to South Korean intelligence and family accounts, Sneddon was fluent in both Korean and Mandarin, an ideal asset for North Korea. The theory? He was abducted by North Korean agents and taken to Pyongyang, where he allegedly became an English tutor to Kim Jong-un under the alias Yoon Bong-soo. This wasn't just speculation. The U.S. House and Senate passed bipartisan resolutions calling for a reopened investigation. The case remains unresolved. Most abductees were confined in what North Korea called invitation-only zones. These were not prisons in the traditional sense, but rather fake neighborhoods with guarded homes, constant surveillance, and indoctrination centers. In these zones, abductees were forced to teach native languages, cultural customs, and even personal habits to North Korean agents. These operatives were then sent abroad on missions, armed with authentic knowledge, taught by real citizens from the very countries they were ordered to infiltrate. Women abductees were often forced into marriages, primarily with American defectors, to prevent the birth of mixed-race children with Koreans, something the regime viewed as unacceptable. This program became known internally as spouse sourcing. These zones looked pleasant from the outside, but inside, they were psychological prisons. When international pressure mounted, especially from Japan, North Korea began issuing so-called evidence of deaths, but the documents were crude. Death certificates with visible correction marks, boxes of animal bones passed off as human remains. Contradictory stories that shifted with every negotiation. In the case of Megumi Yokota, North Korea claimed she had committed suicide, but DNA tests showed the remains returned to Japan belonged to multiple unrelated individuals, none of them Megumi. This wasn't just a denial. It was an orchestrated campaign to erase the truth. Japan's abductees became a major political issue, but South Korea's cases, far more numerous, were largely ignored. Between 1953 and today, over 3,800 South Koreans have been abducted. Fishermen were taken from their boats. Students, entire airliner crews. In 1969, a South Korean passenger jet was hijacked by a North Korean agent and forced to land in Wonsan. 39 people were returned. 11 were never seen again. 2 stewardesses would later appear on North Korean state TV as announcers. In 2000, Reverend Kim Dong-sik, a legal U.S. resident and Christian pastor helping North Korean defectors in China, was abducted in broad daylight. His fate remains unknown. Perhaps the most cinematic case is that of Choi Eun-hee and Shin Sang-ok, South Korea's most famous actress-director couple. They were kidnapped in Hong Kong in 1978, brought to Pyongyang, and ordered to make movies for Kim Jong-il. Shin tried to escape and was thrown into a re-education camp for 5 years. Together, they were forced to make propaganda films, including the infamous Pulgasari, North Korea's answer to Godzilla. In 1986, while on a film tour in Vienna, they escaped into the U.S. Embassy. Their story proved one thing. North Korea was willing to kidnap public figures for talent acquisition, propaganda, and leverage. Abductees weren't just kidnapped, they were reprogrammed, forced to study Juche ideology, recite propaganda, and endure forced labor under threat of starvation or torture. Many were isolated for years, never allowed to contact their families. Some, like Charles Robert Jenkins, lived in North Korea for 4 decades after defecting. In his memoir, The Reluctant Communist, he describes how foreign abductees were used as tools for the regime, married off, monitored, and stripped of identity. The psychological toll extended far beyond the victims. Families waited decades, unsure if their loved ones were dead or alive. Most received no closure, no photographs, no letters, just silence. For many, this may sound like Cold War history, a bizarre relic from a paranoid dictatorship. But here's the truth that changes everything. As recently as 2017, the world watched in horror as Otto Warmbier, a 22-year-old American college student, returned from North Korea in a coma. Officially, the regime blamed botulism, but U.S. doctors found evidence of severe, prolonged brain trauma, the kind consistent with torture, not illness. Then there's David Sneddon, still missing. No body ever recovered. Multiple defectors claim to have seen him alive in Pyongyang. South Korean intelligence says he may still be teaching English to the ruling elite. And what about the unrecognized? The names that never made headlines? According to Japanese police databases, over 880 Japanese citizens may have been abducted, a number far higher than the 17 officially acknowledged by North Korea. And scattered across North Korean documents leaked in 2010, officials found records of foreign nationals from more than 15 countries still living inside Pyongyang's closed society. This wasn't a rogue program. It was, and may still be, a state policy. So ask yourself, how many are still there, alive but invisible? How many children were born inside this system, half foreign, never told the truth of their origin? And if one regime could systematically abduct people across 4 continents for decades, without consequences, what else have they done that we've never been told? Because the silence around this issue isn't just deafening, it's deliberate. These weren't just disappearances. They were lives rewritten against their will. Parents who never saw their children again, spouses left behind without answers, and people forced to live entire lifetimes under false identities in a country that turned them into tools of its regime. Some of the victims were seen again, others were confirmed dead, many through forged documents and fabricated remains, but most were simply erased, their voices silenced, their fates unknown. And while governments issue statements and express regret, the reality remains. North Korea has never faced meaningful accountability, not for the abductions, not for the torture, not for the families destroyed. The story you just heard isn't closed. It may be far from over. New names still surface, new sightings are reported, and some believe a future negotiation might finally bring survivors home. But until then, their stories remain in limbo. So now we turn to you. Do you believe some of them could still be alive? Should countries do more to expose the full scale of this program? Let us know what you think in the comments. If this story moved you, if you think more people need to hear what's been happening behind closed borders, please consider liking this video, subscribing, and turning on the notification bell. There are still many more dark truths left to uncover, and we intend to tell them all.